Hey everybody, welcome to Unscripted, where we are all about inspiring better conversations and thinking more critically and deeply about faith, life, and leadership. And I'm Sam. I'm here with my good friend and pastor Mike. How are you today?
I'm good today, Sam. Appreciating the upgrade in drink quality.
Yeah.
Last week was a paper cup of water. This week it's an Americano from Mugs. Kicking it. Nice. This is great.
You know, one small step at a time. We're going to get there.
If you haven't had an Americano from Mugs yet, you got to try it. That's my favorite drink there by far.
I think that's awesome. I didn't know that, when you compare coffee and Americano, what's the difference? I'm curious.
Well, coffee's okay. Americano's better.
That's literally how you define it.
I don't know. That's what more do you need to know?
I don't know. My coffee game is pretty strong. I grind my own beans every morning.
I know.
And,
you've turned me in actually to a coffee snob a little bit.
Yeah,
Anything used to be fine. And after working together for 10 years, little by little, I've kind of turned to have more of a refined palate.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You
appreciate finer things.
I do. So there's coffees that I know that I like more than others now. I didn't used to know that, and now I know that Americano is my favorite coffee type drink.
Okay, that's fair. I'm good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, what Americano is, espresso with hot water.
Yep, and then heavy cream ideally.
All right. See, I don't do the heavy creamer yet, so that'd be maybe an upgrade.
Yeah, well, you'll learn.
Well, thanks for being here today. I'm excited about our topic because it's a little bit of residual from last week. So last week we flipped the script a bit, and you got to ask me towards the end something like, what surprised you the most about working here over the past 10 years? And you said, and then at the end I'm like, well, what about you? And you're like, yeah, we don't have time for that. That's like a whole other episode. I'm like, okay, well, how about this episode? So if you haven't watched last week's episode, go ahead and go back. It should be able to have a little link for you right on the screen right now. Go back and check it out if you'd like. But right now, I'm going to ask you. You've not been here 10 or 11 years like me. You've been here 18 years plus another year and a half. So basically 20 years.
It was right about 20 years ago right now that I started working on it took a year and a half to get it off the ground before we had our first service.
Oh, man.
So it's about 20 years right now. Yeah.
20 years. Yeah. 20 years. What has surprised you the most?
I've been afraid since last week you were going to ask me that. and I'll just say, if today is your first time ever watching or listening to the podcast, I'd skip on to another one because this could seem kind of sharp and I could seem like the not happiest of guys. And I'm a happy guy.
Yeah, but you're generally a happy guy. I'll attest to that.
I think I am. I think I go through life pretty happy most of the time. But the surprise is, you asked what are the biggest surprises?
Yeah.
I guess both of them run negative.
Okay.
Because I had a lot of expectations of really good things.
Let's start there. What were your expectations?
My expectations were I would come here, do what I thought God was telling me to do, and something good would happen.
Okay, that's a pretty good expectation.
And I didn't at all know what good was, right? That didn't necessarily mean a church would launch and be huge and growing like it has been for 20 years. Not that, but I just knew that that's what God said to do. And I believe when you do it, you're trying to do what God tells you to do, good things happen. God, one way or another, takes care of you. So I didn't really know that the church would work, but I knew that something good was going to happen, even if that meant nobody showed up and I had to whatever, go work at a tiki bar on a beach somewhere. Whatever, something good was going to happen. So I had expectations of all good church, good people, fun times. I don't know. I was expecting good.
I guess you met a lot of those expectations.
Yes, there's been so much good overall, 20 years of general happiness, definitely.
Okay.
But a lot of times in life, you do get what you expect. So that may be a whole different podcast, but, if you expect everything to go terrible all the time, you're going to make that kind of happen for yourself. Yeah, if you expect to win, you can win.
Yeah.
You got to expect to win before you actually can win all the time.
That's a good point.
If you expect good things tend to hahappen more often because you accidentally do things that bring about good things.
Okay.
So...
All right,
that's not the answer. We could talk about that if I can avoid your question. But.
No, and that was just a nice little positive moment because I know we're going to go.
Yeah, so if someone's listening today and you have bad expectations, you got to change that before anything good can happen.
Leadership principle number 1 for the day.
It's on the list of leadership principles. Yep, definitely.
Okay, great. So there you go. That's expectations. But now I'm curious.
So they could turn it off now. They've been listening a few minutes and good. I got something
You're
good.
You're really warning them. They're not going to want to hear this.
Go catch an old Seinfeld episode. Something.
You're building it up.
Yeah.
Okay, but I got to know. What surprised you over the past 20 years the most?
Okay, well, it's funny because when I asked you that and then you asked me, the thought did run through my head.
For sure.
So I kind of thought about it on and off for last week, and there's really two. It depends on how you're asking the question, I guess. So do you want to know what's been the biggest surprise, personally, or what's the biggest surprise as someone who leads a church family, like in like my job expectations and such. Like,
you know, I'm going to answer this, right? I went both.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
but let's start with job.
Okay.
Let's start with job.
Okay, job. My biggest surprise with the job and leading the church all these years is there's a question that just comes up over and over, and we've addressed it so many times from the stage, from our community groups, from all sorts of things that we've done over the years. We continually address it, and yet it remains this question that I just can't make go away, and it's frustrating. Like, are people not listening to the answer or what? And the question is, in some form, like, why isn't the church deeper? Why isn't the teaching deeper? And some people who are study their Bible a little more than that say, you know, in the Bible it says that we could start out learning by focusing on, you know, milk, and then later as you learn more, you got to have the meat. Where's the meat in the sermon? And that question just baffles me. It just and like no one like I say the answer, and it's like I didn't even say anything. Like they weren't listening at all. So that's been my biggest surprise when people say like, why isn't it deeper? Okay. Why isn't there more meat?
Okay, so 2 questions off of that.
Okay.
What would you call deep? And then why does it baffle you that that's the answer?
Okay. What would you call deep? Well, that's my question to them actually. Like,
sure.
What do you call deep? Because what I think you're saying is deep isn't actually deep at all if you continue reading your Bible.
Sure.
That's what blows my mind. Ephesians 2:8-9 says, "You're saved by grace, through faith, not by your works, not by what you do, so that no one can boast about it." That's a verse like people are like, oh, yay, that's so good. And it is, right? Like when you're first discovering faith and trying to decide what you believe, I love that verse. Like, oh, great, I don't have to earn my way to heaven. It's not by that. I shouldn't brag about it. God just loves me and he has grace for me. I love that. But then the very next verse, Ephesians 2:10 is, God made you his masterpiece so that you can do the good works he's planned for you from long ago. There's the deep. It's like, you got to go do something with what you've learned now. John 13:17 would say something similar. Basically, it says, you've heard this, you know this, now go do it. That's the path to blessing. So deep isn't knowing more. That's what people, I just wish I could shake them. Deep isn't knowing more. Deep is living the stuff you already believe.
Okay.
And we've done whole series here at church. We called the series Deep like a year ago about what really is deep. And it's not like, teach me the next thing. You're not ready to learn the next thing because you're not doing the first things. You don't read until you learn the alphabet, right?
You're not. Yeah, I think that's the phrase, right?
You don't run until you walk, and people are wanting. And here's why. Okay, so I'll get to your why. I think it's more fun to run than it is to walk, right? And in faith, the first part's really hard. If you really want to go deep, you actually have to start doing what you've learned. That's tough. You have to change the way you think. You have to change your actions. Yikes. Can I just read another verse, please? Maybe I could memorize it and talk to my friends a whole lot about it. That's not deep. That's actually shallow. Go read what Jesus says about it. Jesus wants to move you to action. Action's deep. You have to know stuff. They go together. You don't neglect all the teaching. You actually live out and do the teaching so you're ready to learn more. And I think my struggle with this with people, the surprise is, sometimes I feel like I just can't get them to do more instead of that step where it's like, okay, now I need to go be kind to someone. Now I need to go share my faith with someone. Instead of taking that step, which is hard and scary, can't I just like study something else? That's not deep. It's not deep. So there's my surprise. In 20 years, I've been talking about this so many times from the stage. And then someone who heard it 3 weeks later will be like, well, how do I get deep? Like, deep's hard. You got to do stuff to get deep. Just like in sports or anything else. You have to actually do something to continue to grow your faith. You can't just keep thinking about it.
Okay.
Thinking's not deeper. It's more intellectual.
So it's
information, not implementation.
But here's my pushback with this. This can kind of come across as anti-intellectual, like anti-Bible knowledge.
Come take a Bible quiz with me, Dan.
But for real, right. I want to push on this because I think this is something that people like argue with us about. Like we have to know Greek translations, and we have to know how this relates to the Old Testament text to know something in context.
As soon as you're ready.
Okay.
As soon okay, Greek translations. That's beautiful. As you study your Bible, the best way to study is in the original language. Like sometimes people think like the King James version of the Bible from a few hundred years ago is the only version of the Bible. That's so dumb. Like, good grief. You're basically saying for all the years, for thousands of years before the King James Bible, no one understood anything. You had to have the King James translation to actually understand something. So you're blowing off all those people from all those years, and then you're blowing off everyone who doesn't speak English for all of eternity.
Yeah.
That's just dumb. Okay, so ideally you would learn things in the original language.
Yeah.
And there's depth there because the words have different nuance and there's beauty in the teaching. I love that. But you're not ready for that if you still can't give grace to someone, if you still don't forgive people, if you're still not kind, right?
Yeah.
If you're not forgiving,
And
if you don't share
say,
your faith. So
I would say you can walk and chew gum at the same time. So I think ideally you're doing both, but you're not going to do one without doing the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like if you are interested in that stuff and you want to grow in that way, great. That's awesome. That's wonderful. But don't sacrifice the fact that you're not doing something, not being grace giving, not being loving, not being forgiving, and then say I just want to grow deeper by like learning more. Like I
well,
think,
the proof that you've actually learned something
Yeah.
is that you can teach it or do it.
so show me. Is what
Teach
you're
it or do
saying.
it, right? Like if they can get up there and teach portions of the Bible or teach about faith, great, you're ready for more.
Definitely.
Right? Because there's some things that we take turns teaching. We pass it on as we go. If you're not ready to teach anything that you've learned so far, you're not ready to learn new stuff. If you're not ready to do anything with what you've learned so far, you're not ready to learn more stuff. So that's the deep process. And you see deep people all around. Like, I'm not saying everyone at church is this way. I'm saying it frustrates me when people talk about it this way.
Yeah.
Tons of people at church are that way. Like, they learn and they change and they grow. And that's a lifelong process for me, too. Am I deep? I don't know. I've been a Christian for 30 years. I've been growing in my faith.
Yeah.
But compared to who? Right? Like, deep compared to who or what? You can't look at other people. It's what has God called you to be. So am I deep from Mike after all these years? I hope so. I hope I'm learning and doing what God's calling me to do. I hope I'm deep, and he'll tell me, right? That's between God and I.
Yeah. And if you want to go like as pure as you can possibly go, you'd have to go to the early New Testament church that's in Acts, right? They're the basic, like they're the earliest church that there is, and they're getting letters from people, and they're maybe reading scripture and stuff from the Old Testament, but then also getting letters and reading the gospel and these other things. But probably like 70 to 90% of them can't read, so they don't have this text, and all they're doing is hearing it spoken, hearing what the leaders are saying about it, and then they're living it. And they're not like spending time in Bible studies. They're breaking bread together. They're sharing meals together. They're living out a Jesus-centered life. And that would be, in my mind, like if I'm supposed to picture like what the community of God is supposed to look like, that's what it looks like. And so that's like, if we can get to that level of deep, it's amazing. But that level of deep has nothing to do with that kind of study. It has it has everything to do with that kind of living.
Exactly. And it's the same as any other thing. You could want to be a doctor.
Totally.
And read every book there is about anatomy and every other part of being a doctor. But if you never do anything with it, you're not a doctor.
Yeah.
No one would come to you, right? I love fishing. You can read everything about fishing and still not be able to catch a single fish.
Yeah.
You have to actually go fishing, and catching a fish makes you an angler, a fisher person. You have to catch it, right? That's the deal. Same in Christianity. It's the same as every other thing. You have to do things with what you've learned, and then you grow, and then you're ready for more and more things.
Most definitely.
You know, even go back to the doctor example, right? Like there's a general practitioner, then there's more and more specific as they continue to learn and develop their skills, and maybe someday you're all the way to a brain surgeon or whatever. That's very, very specific. But they didn't start out as a brain surgeon. You didn't pass all the other classes and go, well, just teach me how to operate on a brain. You're not ready.
Yeah.
You're not ready.
Yeah.
And it's the same with faith. Teach me how to operate on a brain? No. You got to learn the basics, and you got to do the basics, and you can learn more as you go. So that's been the surprise. Like I wish people would get that. And I think the hesitancy of getting it is it's so much work. It's so much work to actually be deep in your faith, because you got to live it. I mean, you have the whole live it study.
Yeah.
Go live your faith. That's what we try to do here at church, right?
Yeah.
A person who is living just even a small portion of their faith is much deeper than a person who knows a whole bunch but isn't living anything of it.
I completely agree with that.
So, and that excites me for the people that are, and it disappoints me for those that just keep pushing it away.
Okay, I want to circle back to that in a little bit.
Okay.
But I want to hear the next answer. So
The personal one?
the personal
Oh,
one.
good grief! This will be a time you could turn it off now, because this is harsher. But the surprise over 20 years is how often people that claim to be Christian people don't act at all like a Christian person should act.
What do you mean by that?
Well, first of all, someone else who trained here, Aaron Winowiski, who trained here for a few years and then went out and planted a church in Weston. He's been there 15 years, has done a fabulous job. I learned this from him, actually, about like back when the What Would Jesus Do movement was so big and everyone had the bracelets and stuff. Aaron would always change and say, well, that's too tough. Like, what would Jesus do? It's Jesus. It's so easy to go, well, I can't be Jesus, so I'm going to do nothing. So he would always say, well, what do you think a Christian person would do? So say someone says something bad about you or whatever it may be in life, ask for help, whatever it may be. If you just ask yourself, what would like a Christian person do? That really leads you to what you should do. Mm-hmm. So I'm sorry, I went sidetrack a bit there.
Yeah.
Go ahead, come back.
So you said, what should a Christian person do? But you said in your answer
they don't act like
people aren't actually acting like Christians. So I'm curious, like what
how
do
quickly?
You mean?
Yeah, it's just I've been shocked over the years at how quickly people turn. It's like they hear one thing and they just get so angry and so hurtful, and I just sit home and wonder, like, how could you do that? How could you possibly say that to me or do that behind my back? How could you do that? You claim to be a Christian person. It shocks me, and it's like it's this edge that some people just go there so fast and are so critical. Here's a crazy example, and I've shared this before in different seminars we've taught here at church. One time, a few years back, someone called me and just drilled me on the phone. What a terrible guy I was, how horrible I am, because I dislike gay people so much. And they pretty much said their piece. And I didn't even get a really chance to answer. They just vented. I'm never coming back to your church. You stink. The church stinks. Goodbye. And they hung up. And I was like, why would they ever think that? I like gay people as much as not gay people. I like all people, I hope, the same. Mm-hmm. Like Jesus does.
Yeah, totally.
So I was so shocked, right? And I went home and told Janet, and like, I can't believe they said this about me, whatever. And she tried to be encouraging. That's kind of the role sometimes. The next day, I got a call from someone.
Yeah.
Saying, you like gay people too much. You're always like, and it was awesome because they read me the same way and they hung up the same way. I'm like, there you go.
That's it.
How in the world could you get like two people having the exact opposite meaning of whatever I've said? They came to completely different conclusions, and then the end was, I stink, the church stinks.
And both these people would say that they're Christians.
Yes. Yes. So that's one example of what's happened many, many times over the years. And it's gotten harder because, like, at first you're new and people don't know you. But I've been around 20, like you said, 20 years now. I have a track record, right? You can judge a tree by its fruit. You can judge my life by the fruit of my life. You can judge this church by the fruit of the church. That's what Jesus says. Like, judge a tree by its fruit. That's how you know what the tree produces, right? That's what kind of tree it is.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's happened so many times where people are just so cruel, sort of in the name of Jesus. Like, they think they're representing Jesus with their cruelty, and they're not at all. They're just being cruel. And it continues to surprise me. And I actually maybe more surprised now because I would think, like, maybe the church or myself would have more credibility, so people would have to back off a notch. But they're just so quick to be angry and find fault. It's like, but you're a person of faith. Like, where are you getting this from the Bible?
Yeah.
So that's been it's a very hard. There's been a lot of bad nights over the years because of that, and very few bad nights over the years from people who wouldn't claim to be Jesus followers. Generally, people that don't claim to be Jesus followers are thankful for anything you can do to help them. They're like, oh, that's so nice. Why would you do that? Well, I do that because I'm trying to follow Jesus. Like, really? That's really neat. Maybe I should come to church someday. Right? So the criticisms and the hurts have come from Christian people, which that's really weird to me.
Okay. So I'm curious about that.
So I hope I didn't just turn off all Christian people, because that's a small subset, right? Like there's tons and tons of amazing people. So I'm not saying that about everybody. I'm saying when it does happen, it's surprising and hurtful. That's all. And still surprising.
And I'm curious, have there been enough where maybe you've questioned your faith because of it?
I've questioned their faith.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay,
I don't turn it off. But no, I know that I believe in God. I know I believe in God. I have no doubt I believe in God. I know that I follow the teachings of Jesus. I know. I'm doing my best. Like, you can find moments where I do poorly at it, but I'm trying. But when people claim to follow and then don't do anything that resembles what Jesus describes, I got to wonder. It's maybe like a Pharisee. It's in your head. You know these facts, but you don't live like it.
But guess what I'm asking is, I'm glad that was your answer to has a struggle with your faith. I didn't see that one coming. I like it, but
and that's okay. Like, maybe it sounded really mean. I don't mean it to be mean, because this is a place where you can find faith.
Okay.
So even if they don't have faith or super critical, I'm hopeful, I'm prayerful for them that they do, and I want to help them.
Yeah.
So it's not like, hey, leave me alone. It's I want to help you.
And there's so many things I want to get at.
They don't want to be helped. They think they already know, but I still would like to help them.
First, Let me get the words right. When you
This might be the last unscripted ever, right?
No, I think this is great. This is really fun because I think this is actually what people need to know. Like they need to understand the differences that this makes. And
We should have called it unfiltered.
Well, we can do that too.
Okay.
We could do unscripted and unfiltered
Right.
and whatever other unword you want to throw in there.
All right.
But what I'm curious about for you is this. How about your job? Do you ever get so discouraged by people like that you're like, I'm just going to throw it in. I can't deal with these people anymore.
Yeah, there have been moments.
Okay. I was curious. I just wanted you to, I want to
Honestly,
know.
yeah. I mean, I want to, we're pals. I want to be honest. And yeah, there's been moments over the years. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay. So what's gotten you through that? Like what are the, I mean, what do you look at? What do you choose to focus on in those moments?
This will sound super churchy. I don't really feel like I have that much of a choice of what I'm supposed to do. There's what you want to do in life, and there's what God asks you to do.
Okay.
And He has not asked me to stop showing up and trying.
Yeah.
So there's moments. There's like anybody. Like everyone has moments where it's like, good grief, how am I continue to be a parent today? Wouldn't it be great just to not be a parent for a day? Whether it's parenting or any job whatsoever. There's moments for everyone in all things. But in those moments, that's the time to go back to God because He's the one that always supports you. If you're having your worst day as a father, right? The answer is not in a bottle.
Yeah.
You're like, okay,
No,
I'm having
it's
a terrible day, so let me go get drunk and forget about it. That's not the answer.
No.
God has an answer for you though, because God saw that you were a crummy father for the day, and He still loves you, and He still wants to help you. So return to God. So that's me, right? Like in church and fatherhood and everything, it's like God is your one safe place where you're always loved, you're always forgiven, you're always encouraged, you're always corrected. Like so you can be off,
Yeah.
and God's gonna say, hey, that's wrong.
Yeah.
Don't do that, or go this way instead. But He's always there. So why would you leave that? Is constant support from an all-knowing, all-powerful God. I'm not walking away from that, even if I'm frustrated.
I think that's really good. And I think that I love that that's how you like persevere through it. But now I want to circle back to what I was going to talk about before and
Okay.
the question I have for you. So we have these people, right? In one sense, it's the people that want to question deepness all the time and maybe become a little bit critical because of it. And the second side, it's just overtly feel like you have a right to be critical just because maybe you're Christian and you feel like you can have an opinion about things. But
Well, it's the world these days.
Yeah,
Everyone's
yeah.
critical everywhere, but it shouldn't bleed so strongly into Christianity. You should be
fair
above
point.
that
Yeah, absolutely.
as a maturing Christian.
As a maturing Christian. But why do people fall into it? So like without being frustrated with them, knowing that they're humans and they've chosen to live a particular way and they've chosen to be critical in a particular way, giving them the benefit of the doubt, like, hey, maybe they just slipped into doing this without realizing what they're going to do. Why do people feel this sense of wanting more deep or thinking they want something that's different and deep? And then why do people fall into feeling like they have the ability to be critical?
Well, I'll start. Remind me what they both were, because it might be hard to remember two things.
No, that's fine, yeah.
Old Sam. But the critical thing, again, for me, go back to Jesus' teaching. That's the point where you start every single time. So we live in a critical world. There's nothing but negativity all the time on the news everywhere.
Yeah.
But that's not a new thing. It's very visible these days, but it's always been there. People really haven't changed. So Jesus faced the same thing in the book of Matthew. Early on in the book, maybe chapter 7, I can't remember for sure. Someone basically wants to be a complainer, and Jesus is like, hey, why are you worried about the speck in your friend's eye when you got a big log in your own?
Definitely.
Okay?
Definitely.
So Jesus addressed it way back then. Like, don't be so critical of everyone else. So people have always been critical. That's not a new thing. That's part of human nature, and I believe it's part of human nature because so much easier to pick on someone else than it is to really analyze yourself and work on your own weaknesses, because that is zero fun.
Do you think they're trying to help?
On my good days.
Okay. I was curious.
Sometimes, but
Yeah.
sometimes, but if you're a Christian person and you're trying to help like Jesus helps.
Which is?
Love, acceptance, encouragement, forgiveness, teaching, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
A little bit of correction thrown in there, but only like after you have enough respect that correction actually means something.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, even more so than that, maybe and I think that we've talked about this a lot, when you're going to correct somebody or when you're going to point out a problem, be ready to help solve the problem.
There's a beauty in Christianity that so many grasp onto, and you're saved by grace through faith, right?
Yeah.
Like, we love this. Jesus died for your sins to pay the penalty for you. We love that. Christian people embrace that. But that wasn't Jesus' only purpose on earth. Jesus also came to live as a man to be an example for us. So the receiving grace part is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, I believe in Jesus. I'm good to go with God all the way into eternity. Awesome. Day one.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the days is, okay, now follow Jesus' example. And that's harder.
It's a lot harder.
That's harder.
Yeah.
So that's it. Like, it's so much easier. I can be critical of someone else now. I know something. Versus follow Jesus and actually live like Jesus yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's why.
And living like Jesus means like actually wanting to help other people know him.
Sacrifice, being a servant, all the things that Jesus did.
Yeah.
Take them one at a time, do the best you can. But
yeah,
it's hard, though. I mean, I've been following Jesus for a really long time, and it's still hard to try to live like Jesus.
Yeah.
But there's honor in the effort. You know, even when I fall and mess up, I still believe it's honorable to be trying.
Yeah. Do you think the deep comment can come from a good place?
I think it comes from someone listening to poor teaching.
Okay.
You know, because they learned that somewhere,
Yeah.
right? Like somewhere they heard like what deep is, and they maybe embraced it because it was easy to embrace. It was milk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was so easy to embrace. Like, oh, I just got to think about more stuff, and if I learn a few extra words and memorize a verse, then I'm deep. That's not what Jesus said. That's what the Pharisees said. And Jesus fought it back then, and I think Jesus is still fighting it today. And as people who follow Jesus, we fight along with him.
Yeah.
We fight the same things he fought.
It's so interesting. You've talked about the grace thing versus works, basically. It's kind of what you've been alluding to.
Yeah.
And I think people want to say that deep is knowing that grace and understanding that grace more in more depthful ways and like owning it. And
it's a gift, Sam. How much you got to understand a gift? You know, you open the gift, you use the gift. It's like, whoa, this is amazing. I love the gift.
Well, I think there's an element of like learning it more and more over the years. Like there's a sense in which you feel like you have accepted the gift, but then you realize over time that you actually have to own it in a way. You know what I mean?
If I gave you my phone right now, it's a really nice phone. It's a nice gift.
Yeah.
Right? And you could use it a little bit.
Yeah.
But the only point to learning more of its features would be to actually use the features.
I agree with you, but sometimes, and that's exactly it though, is there have to be circumstances in life where you realize your need for the features.
Yeah.
So for the grace part of it, you have to live and live their faith. And then that process of actually doing the things and getting in the dirt and in the mud actually allows you to realize, oh, I really do need this gift.
All the time. All the time.
More,
Like, I'm not blowing that off. Like, here's the gift, right? And you got to use the features. Great. So now you come to this situation in life where it's like, oh, I have this relationship struggle.
Yeah.
Huh. What does God say about relationship struggles?
Yeah.
Oh, I have this issue at work. What does God say about the issue at work? And then apply that to your life, right? Yeah. So there's reasons to continue to study the Bible and to learn more and more and more what God says, then do them.
Yeah.
Right? You read all about how to treat your children and do nothing with it isn't deep. But to read what God says about trying to be a good parent and then try to do it, that's super deep.
Totally.
So same with the phone, right? Like you learn the features to use the features.
Yep. Absolutely.
You learn more and more about faith, your own faith, what God expects of you to actually make changes and use it. It's not just ever been head knowledge.
No, it's got to be more than head for sure. Because otherwise, it's nothing. I guess it's just, I won't use that phrase.
There are. Here's a perfect example, and this, I mean, no disrespect to anyone by this. There are professors of theology that know so much about the Bible. They've studied their entire lives, but they maybe don't. They maybe don't have a deep faith. Some don't even actually have faith. They would claim to be an atheist, but they know everything that's in the Bible, but they have no faith.
No, I've met them.
So and again, I mean, no disrespect. They're on their own journey too.
Yeah.
But knowing more doesn't mean living by faith. They should go together. They can go together. It's beautiful when they do. But knowing more doesn't mean having more faith.
Yeah. All right, last thing.
All right.
Last thing, because I think we've talked a long time. This is good stuff.
I don't know. I'm almost done with this coffee. So
I'm glad I gave you that coffee. We got some good stuff out of that coffee.
Jazzed up.
All right. So we talk about people a lot. Like we talked about the kinds of people that we have in church, the kinds of people that maybe have led to some not so pleasant surprises for you over the years. How has that impacted how you lead? And what I mean by that is more so in like how you pick people to lead. So when you think about that, like who when you're trying to figure out who is going to lead in a particular area or some part of the church, or maybe like going to start a new ministry or something, how has that informed how you think about who to lead?
Well, God chooses based on people's hearts.
Yes.
And I've always tried to choose the same way. And overall, I would say I have a very good track record of choosing leaders here at church. Various ministries that are led. I mean, staff members. There's been so many leaders over 20 years. Yeah. And we have a really, really good track record based on, again, going to the Bible and say, how does God do it? Well, let's try to do it the same way. So God chooses based on heart, character, right? All that instead of skills. Yeah. So the skills don't impress him so much. Heart does. So heart impresses us here at church. That's how we choose leaders. But even with that said, I've made some mistakes. Yeah. I mean, there's people that I've known or helped for 15 years that suddenly do the meanest of things, and I can't understand why. So I don't have a 100% track record. Okay. But I mean, I guess even one of the disciples went bad. So
yeah, that's true. You know. This is true. But what I do hear you saying in that is that even in the midst of whatever you're trying to pick somebody to lead, and you put together your comments about somebody who maybe is a bit more critical, or maybe somebody who is asking for something that maybe isn't actually what they really think that they want, and you talk about heart, you can see by someone's actions and someone's words a little bit of a picture into their heart. And so if you see somebody who's always critical but not always stepping up to solve problems, you're thinking about that when you're thinking about who to choose to lead.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because I was more that way when I was younger, more critical. Okay. And I've learned over time not to be. So I have tons of hope for people that seem a little bit critical. And I've had a lot of nice conversations over the 20 years here where I've noticed that in someone else and just said, you're very analytical, you're a little bit critical, but you see things. That's awesome. Yeah. But let's not stop with critical. Let's be a change agent. Yeah. Let's lead the change, not just complain about it. And a ton of people have responded to that because it's not an argument. Because I've been there. Like, I've been through it, too. I know what it feels like. And I still am that way a bit. Like, if I look at someone, I'll see, like, the flaw right away. I can't help it. Yeah. But it's what you do after you see the flaw that matters.
And maybe that's a good way to finish this off, is there's hope in that, actually. Yeah. Because, I mean, as much as that's been probably something that's hurt and something that's been frustrating over the last 20 years, it's obvious that even if you are in a place where you're coming at things a bit more critically, there is room for growth. So if you're personally like listening to this, you're like, man, I'm a little too critical. Maybe the next step for you to actually change and do the thing is to be the person that doesn't just say the critical thing, but takes it a step further, loves first, then is critical, then is actually problem solving. And then if you're leading people that are critical, know that it's not always a negative thing, but you have to actually see it, recognize it, have a conversation, not an argument about it, and point them in a direction where it can be a healthy thing.
Your hope was a big word, because I think Jesus always has hope for us. Totally. So we should do our very best to always have hope for others. Definitely. That's just following Jesus' example, even when it's tough, even when you don't want to. Yeah. Because we're human. Yeah. But the goal would be, again, in all ways, to try to live like Jesus, whether you work at a church or not.
Awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. Well, this has been fun. I'm glad we were able to follow up on that discussion from last week. We've got some good things planned for the next couple weeks, so just keep on tuning in. There's some good ones coming.
So you're trying to get them not to quit after hearing all this? Is that like, good things are coming, don't give up now?
After feeling I'm just kidding. No, I'm not going to say that. I think this is great. I like this stuff. This is the stuff that I think people need to hear and know that this is reality. And just like your reality, when you come in contact with critical people, it's the same in the church, but we're called to something more. And I think that's a powerful thing to remember, and also to check yourself and think about how you're coming into a situation like this, or how you're coming into a church and what you're contributing. Those are really important, powerful things. And if you're in business, if you're in a school or wherever, these things all play. And I think that's good.
Good.
So thanks so much for tuning in. Continue to share this and like this in all those ways. Thank you guys. We love having you be a part of this and send in questions. I can't wait for some more questions. I've got a couple up my sleeve for coming weeks, and it's going to be some good stuff. So thank you, and we will see you all next week.